quick little intro of what we're doing here. I want to first say thank you to everyone that's coming out for this little education. We started this kind of little training course for PCH and the Kona staff, just kind of as veteran bartenders and dealing with a lot of like young bartenders and young staff, and trying to, what we say is like bridging the gap between the newer bartenders that are coming in and the older generation of bartenders that a lot of us have either moved on from operations, gone to work brand jobs, maybe left the country, started doing other jobs, maybe selling real estate or being financial advisors. So I think a lot of it is just trying to bridge the gap of missing veteran bartenders behind the bar, and having those conversations with bartenders and the older generation and the veterans that we're missing right now. We started this as a staff education for PCH and for the CONUS team. So we've been inviting a lot of our friends and veterans that we highly respect and we've worked with that can share stories. So it's not just coming from us as veterans, but people in the industry that we respect and that have a lot of cool stories to share. So we're hoping to share stories, talk with you about best practices of hospitality, how we got this far, engaging, disengaging guests, and kind of reading the room and talk about those hard conversations that we don't get to have. So again, I'm gonna introduce a couple of our colleagues, some PDT alum. So we're kind of cool that all four of us worked at PDT together back in the early 2000s. So we have our leader, Jim Meehan, who's up from Portland, which one of you know. Nader, who's up from SAC. Who's also up from Portland. So I couldn't think of a better team that has some chemistry and has some dichotomy of so many different roles of work in the industry, from brand ambassadors to being behind the bar to starting their own businesses to being entrepreneurs to running bars. So it's like there's a lot of great fathom of knowledge and experiences that we want to be able to share and have those conversations with you as young bartenders and older bartenders of best practices of hospitality, how to give great hospitality, what is great hospitality, engaging guests and such. So I guess the kind of started off would be just best practices, best hospitality experiences that we've had, and kind of just roll with that. Jim, I'll let you go, but not for 2 hours.
I feel like that I wrote a green book that has a service chapter and a hospitality chapter, and I'll just preface my answer. I think that when we're talking about hospitality, we really should be talking about service. Service is something that we are in control of, something that we can learn. It has to do with the conventions of the bar we're in, the ways in which we're trained. Service is something we can actually give. And there's different sort of styles of service for every bar, and every bartender has their own personality which they bring to service. So I think it's important to distinguish between service and hospitality. Hospitality is the way you make somebody feel. And I feel like as a bartender or bar operator, I can pay my staff and I can train my staff to provide a style of service, a quality of service. I cannot pay my staff to provide hospitality. Hospitality is something that it's off the books, and it's something I think that you either are able to give or not give based on your own life energy and based on your own joy that making other people makes you feel. And if you don't enjoy making other people feel happy, hospitality work will probably be very challenging for you, because hospitality work also is not something that you can monetize very easily. The more hospitality you offer, you don't necessarily become richer and richer and richer. The billionaires of our world are not the greatest givers of hospitality. I would say that, to answer your question, the best hospitality experience that I probably have ever experienced, I've had many, but I put, for that chapter in the book, I put a picture that I took of the former previous proprietor of La Capilla in the town of Tequila, Don Javier, who I had the privilege of visiting 3 different times, and over those visits, I sat at a very humble bar, drank really shitty tequila that I would never order anywhere else, and had the privilege of being served by Don Javier and his sons, and I just remember sitting there and him cutting. He didn't speak any English. I don't speak enough Spanish to converse deeply with him, and I just remember feeling more seen and special than I felt anywhere else in the world, even though I was being served by someone who I couldn't really communicate intimately with. So I feel like it was just like a Piamian's Chapel. I felt like I was at the church being served by the Pope of Hospitality himself. It was something that had nothing to do with fancy cocktails or delicious tequila. It had to do with being in a special place and someone, just doing what they do, which was something that is very hard to explain in a book or in a seminar or in a training. And it's cool.
That's awesome. That's great. Lindsay?
Gosh. Yeah, I guess it's always like I've said a bunch of times, I would rather have like the worst drink ever in front of a really kind and giving and interactive person than just a mind-blowing cocktail made by an asshole. Yeah, actually the other day we were walking around trying to pass some time, and we went into our little like coffee shop that's on the corner. And it's not the fancy coffee shop in our neighborhood, it's just kind of the one that's always been there. And there was a lady in front of us who was like so extra and like really demanding of what she wasn't unkind, but it was like, whoa. And we kind of made a joke with the barista about it, like, oh wow, like, who's that? And they were like, oh, that's Brenda, she's a regular, and we just give her a lot of grace. And I was like, wow. I was like, that's so amazing that they know that we're in the industry. They could have been like, oh yeah, fuck that woman, she's so annoying, we can't stand it. But they were like, we just give her grace. And that was like 2 days ago. That just really blew me away.
Yeah. Mine is from a long time ago. There was a little bar in the Lower East Side, and it was snowing like crazy. It was like shin-high snow on the ground. And I was still, maybe I was a year out of college. I lived up by Union Square, which is like a long walk. And I was waiting to let a friend of a friend in, because you're like 23 and weird people crash on your couch, because that's the kind of life you're in. And I was getting ready to settle up, and my friend happened to be working, and I was like, no, like, Nick, I gotta go, like, I just got this call, and I got this treasure. He's like, I know. And I see him pouring into this empty soda can. That's weird. What is he doing? I was like, Nick, no, I gotta go. I like cashed out. I'm like, come on. And he's like, for your walk. And it was a double dark and stormy in a soda can for my little 2-hour snow walk up to my place. And I'll never forget it, because I was nobody, and I was just getting to know these guys, and I just started a PDT, and it was like my night off, and I was like at this bar to like just learn from these dudes, and he didn't charge me for anything. He sent me on my way with the exact thing I needed to get home, and it was just like, we talked in prep for this about like reading the room, and it was like such a masterclass of knowing exactly what I needed that I didn't even know I needed, and I just like, it still to this day sticks out. And I've told that story to so many bartenders that I've worked with and been lucky enough to spend time with, and every time they don't get like how much it meant to me to just be like, oh, man, you see me. So that does.
Yeah, I mean that's awesome, and that's a tribute to being able to read the room as a bartender, right? We're not just concentrating on the well and the drinks and making the drink absolutely perfect. We're trying to see everything that's encompassing the room, from the guests that are walking in to our regulars. Our regulars walk in, and it's just like we know exactly what they're drinking, and making an extra step to know exactly what they're drinking and making it on the fly. We were talking earlier just kind of about topics in this conversation of just bartending, and is it a desirable profession? Why is it desirable? Like, why are we doing this work? And I think the biggest question that I ask myself every day is why, right? If you don't know the why and why we're doing this, is why we're in this industry, is to take care of people. And I think Jim, you were talking about the other day in terms of like this is hospitality. We're here to take care of people constantly. So it's just like reading the room, knowing when people are getting drunk, getting cut off, whether they're going to get into the room if they're not cut, if they're drunk, and knowing when they're going to need when to cut them off, and how to disengage the person or de-escalate the situation. I think a lot of it's like best practices. What are your best practices of of being able to see that situation happen, and how do you engage somebody to tell them that they've had enough alcohol to happen?
I mean, I think for me, it's the foundation of the work that we all do is really kind of in taking care of people. You have to be looking out for their health and their wellness and like how they're doing. And so if someone shows up at your bar who's had too much to drink, because you should genuinely be interested in their well-being, it serves you to not serve them anymore, and to make sure that you can gather how intoxicated they are, and to figure out a strategy for them, whether it's they need to sit down at the bar, maybe drink a little water, and maybe you can get them some food and sober them up, or if like things are even potentially much worse. So I would say that for me, beginning to answer that question starts with figuring out where that person is in their night, and figuring out what that would need. And for me, a lot of what I use to figure that out is just thinking of all of my drinking experiences I've had in my life, and all the sort of times when I would maybe have a few too many drinks, and what I could have, should have, or would have done had I had someone there to sort of counsel me on best practices. We talked about it earlier, and I find that one of the things I found in every bar and restaurant I've worked in is that there's sort of like 3 levels of entitlement that we have with our guests. There's the guests who want to come into our bar or restaurant, who are maybe on the phone or online or outside of the physical premises. There's the door, where they're actually interacting with someone who works in the business. And then there's inside the business and ordering something. And there's sort of 3 places where the guest goes from sort of an aspirational experience to like a membership situation, where it's much harder to cut someone off after you've already served them a few drinks than it is before they've even walked into the door. So I think that it's so important to identify that as soon as possible, and as an owner or operator, to understand if there are some bars that are getting people overly intoxicated every night. And so I think as an operator, if you find yourself, cutting people off every night, I think you have to look at yourself in the eyes and be like, what is going on in my business that is creating such a room full of intoxicated people every night? Overly intoxicated.
I mean, the thing too, like bars and restaurants are communities, and like even if it's just this little community right now, I don't know all y'all, and I would love to get to meet you individually, but like you have to think about the group as a whole. And I think it was Jazz Regan who said the second somebody starts impacting someone else's experience, that's when you cut them off. That's like the sort of golden rule, if there is one. And thinking about it through that lens is easy, because it's like 99% of this bar is doing their job. Like they're having a good job, they're looking out for each other, they're here to do what they came to do. And we need to take this person out of that equation, because they're starting to impact the organism as a whole. And when you take sort of yourself out of that interaction, you take them out of the interaction, make it about the group at large, it gets a lot easier. You can start to use people around you, you can have them, there's a million different ways we can get into that as helpful, but if you think about it in the context of the whole community, it's easy to be like, this has to go, it's ruining everybody else's time.
Yeah.
It's like being an ally, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's kind of easy to get really hung up on like just the mechanics of service and making sure your ticket times are where they should be, and making sure the drinks are like exactly how they should be. But I think for me, like the most cohesive teams I've worked on has been a mix of personalities, where we have like the workhorse that just puts their head down and looks at tickets, and then kind of the point personality that's really keeping eyes up and making sure like catching all of those little, maybe it's signs of somebody who's about to overstep or bother a group of women or whatever. So I think the more that you can kind of adapt within your team to have those different roles, the stronger that you're going to be.
Yeah. I kind of sat in on your and Trev's training one time we were doing the pop so you had some really good points of what you guys do in service. You can elaborate a little more, and like you have like keywords or gestures or like these kind of cool signs that you do when there's situations happening. It's just like having that chemistry with your team to know, to be able to communicate with the team that there's something happening, and be able to tell the team. And again, it's like getting an ally on your side.
Yeah.
So it's not just about you going against someone else or a group, or maybe getting the person that's drunk in that group, getting someone in that group to be your ally. I mean, it's just like you want some people to support you. It's not. I really like. Kind of, if you want to touch point on.
Yeah, we've done a lot of training with Weave, which is a group that helps battered women transition, gives them housing. But they've come in and done a couple staff trainings with our team and basically just taught us how to identify, like maybe someone's on a date and the woman is uncomfortable and needs help or is actually in a bad situation. And so we've been able to read some body language. And then it's been a while since I've been behind that bar, but they do have a system that there's something that they say to the woman that the man or the other person that they're with can't understand, and then or they like wait until he goes to the bath. I don't know. They have a system that we've kind of implemented that works really well, and we've had feedback of a few people being like, "Thank you so much. We feel like this is a safe space. We're going to come back again." So yeah, there's resources out there to that you can use to kind of teach you some tricks.
And Sean, you were saying use. What was the words you were saying earlier?
It's like a little bit corny. You use this a lot with like kids when you're discussing like de-escalation and regulating feelings and I statements instead of you statements, and it really works because I have a 4-month-old, and the more time I spend with her, the more it reminds me of the super drunk people that I serve across the bar in terms of like how they can regulate their emotions and how they can control their body or whatever. But instead of saying you drank too much, you can't have. It's like in Oregon we have this thing called the OLCC, which is like our governing liquor body, and I got to say all the time, like, I'm so sorry. I would love to serve you. I can't. I'll get my license. It was all about me. It was all about me. And the person was kind of like, yo, like I get it. You have it hard, man. I'm super sorry. Like I'll just have water or whatever. But the more you can make it about you and the situation that you've noticed and you've seen, or what. And to Kev's point about allies, like obviously it can get off the rails. What we're talking about is preempting that sort of as soon as possible. But this idea of grace and this thing Jim said, kind of off the cuff, like we've all. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's people who've never had a drink in here, but like. I've acted out in the bar, and I didn't want someone to come up and embarrass me in front of my girlfriend or in front of my friends. Like, as much as you can use the golden rule, as corny as that is, like, it's gonna go better for you. Like, if you treat someone like shit, they're gonna fly off the handle because they're low. Like, and I think as much as you can sort of empathize with the situation, and to Kev's point, own it. Like, drive them out of you, but do it with love, like actually with love. It usually goes better.
Yeah, for the most part, people want to just be heard, right?
Yeah.
They want to air their grievance, so they want to be heard, and it's our duty to listen to them, because that's all we do. Is we're going to listen and we're going to react. But a lot of times it's just like someone's really mad or upset, you just let them be angry at you. And I think the best thing, advice I always give is they're never upset at you as a person, right? They don't know you, they don't know Lila, they don't know Joseph as a person, right? They're upset at the situation and they're not attacking you. So as soon as you can remove yourself and your being as a person, they're like, this person's upset, but they're not upset at me because they don't know me. Like I've been serving on them, but they don't actually know me, my character. So they're upset at the situation. So if you can get out of your head that you feel like you're being attacked, you're not getting attacked. The situation that you're being given is what you can tell.
Well, and I think that sort of mindset can extend to interactions with your coworkers. Like we've all been in busy bars and we've all been snapped at people. And after service, if you're lucky enough to sit around and enjoy, an iced tea with your coworkers, you can say, I'm sorry. Like I'm sorry I yelled at you about not having ice as well, or I'm sorry I yelled at you about putting your finger in the fruit bowl and putting on it, like whatever it was. But in that moment, it's not about me and Kev. Kev's mad at me because like I messed up all those maids and now he's got to be muddled cucumber or whatever. Like it's just extending that same sort of it's not about me. I think works both across the bar and with your team, like in terms of giving and giving feedback.
I think mastering that too, like it's so hard to not take things personally because you're giving and you're giving and you're giving, and like you have to prepare yourself mentally and emotionally before you walk in for a shift. And you're giving, and then something negative happens. It's like, oh. But I'm just so open and I'm giving so much. But if you can really master that, that's like a life hack for everybody. Being like a really good bartender in that way, where you're focusing on what you can control and everything else that you can't control starts to hurt you less and less. I mean, especially with like stoicism becoming so in vogue and and people, it's just something that I hear so often. And thinking about my skills as a bartender, I'm so fortunate that I have that muscle that I can always return to.
Wait, what's Stoic? Sorry, I don't even know.
The Stoics.
What? What's,
Like,
is that like no emotion? Or?
No, it's controlling the things that you, focusing on what you can control,
Okay,
and then
okay.
letting go of the chaos that the
Okay.
universe is around you. in a nutshell.
Ryan Holiday.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very different than Bede's
Yeah,
classical
yeah.
community word, but it's an old philosophy.
Oh God, I've never heard that. Yeah.
I'll send you some links.
Yeah. No, it's good. I mean, it's just like.
School is the way.
But it's like it's. I mean, we're such we're emotional behind the bar. We can be emotional because we're giving so much, right? It's the art of hospitality and service is giving yourself, right? You're giving yourself every single day and every single night in terms of emotion and physicality. So it's just like it does your feelings do get hurt, but it's like you come in and it's not about you, right? Everyone, the guests that are coming in, it's about them. It's not about me or what I did through the day, or if I'm having a bad day. It's letting go of what that is, because that's not a word. Letting go of things you can't control, and letting the guests come in and have their time and their experience. Because it's not about my experience behind the bar. It's about the guests that are coming in.
And if we're gonna get woo-woo with it, I mean, you're just a vessel for the place, right? Like, if I come in here and y'all are like, hey, let's make Mai Tai, like, we're gonna use Kev's specs because this is his bar. It doesn't matter what I think about it or how much Bourgeois I'm trying to sell to y'all or whatever. Like, if we think of ourselves as vessels for like this room, this idea, this place, and think about the guests as the reception of that, then there's not really time to be like, oh man, can't be a big business about not replenishing his alcohol or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I'm just trying to make PCH and make these guests feel PCH.
Yeah, and that's also how legacy continues too, and how we don't lose these. We were just talking about on the phone, these traditions that the people that we learn from spend so much time putting into place. And obviously, everybody has their riffs and variations, but we want to make sure that we don't lose that connection to all of the work that's been done before we got here.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to carry on what all the other bartenders have done for us. And we're vessels from them, and trying to keep the tradition and not have. I think we're talking about how what was it, Sean? Like the robots are taking over, or like QR codes or something. Or it's just like the art of what we're doing isn't becoming an art anymore. We're almost making it replaceable.
It's worth acknowledging that like this is an unprecedented time. Like we've all made drinks for sure, but like making drinks right now is pretty unique. And I know unprecedented is kind of like the word pivot. Like everybody's heard it enough. We're all done hearing it. But like this is a tricky time to be making drinks for people. And the point I was trying to make to Cal was that it's getting easier and easier and easier and easier to execute a delicious cocktail. It is not getting easier to bar. And bartending is like Jim said this, is the Malcolm Gladwell thing, the 10,000, it's a skill. It's a craft. You hone bartending. My mom can make a really, really good drink. My mom's not a bartender. My mom would like cry if she came in and had to work PCH service tonight when Weezer's a couple blocks away. So, and that's all I was talking about is like, we can't give that part of it away. We can't just put every cocktail on draft and have every cube. Like, we have to hold on to this skill the way that like guilds held on to, like, again, to reach way back in time. Like, this is a craft. This is a craft. This is a trade. Like, we should be proud of it, and we should hone those parts of it that we can hone. Otherwise, yeah, I do fear robots and cell phones will take away some of these jobs.
Yeah, and don't forget the power that you guys have to really like change someone's day or month. We don't know what's happening. People walking off the street, we don't know the pain that they're carrying, what they're going through, and just one simple like interaction can completely change somebody's day. So that's something really powerful, and that's something that should be treated with a lot of respect.
And that's how businesses succeed, right? It's not about, it's creating that regular, creating diehard fans of your bar and your brand. And that's success, is I would say it's like, you want to be the type of bar that you go to right after work for a quick drink, but we're the same bar that you come to on the weekend with your friends. If you can create that culture and that experience for your guests, the guests are going to keep coming, because that group of guests that are coming in with that friend that's a regular, they're going to turn to a regular. And it's just like creating that experience and ambiance and that comfort, that level of comfort to come in there where it's not pretentious, where it's just you bring them in, you draw them in to be part of the team, part of the bar, part of the community. It's huge every day.
I should also point out, like, I remember I bartended from 1995 to 2005 at everything from like a sports bar in Madison, Wisconsin to Gramercy Tavern. And it was interesting when I was working at Gramercy Tavern, which at the time was like the #1 Zagat-rated restaurant in New York, and working one night a week at the Peggy Club. At Gramercy Tavern, I was whistled at, I was snapped at. One night someone threw a peanut at my head for my attention. And on Monday night at Peggy Club, people were like speaking to me in like hushed tones about the Gin Gin Mule. And working at the Peggy Club in 2005 was the first time in my career that I was ever treated like a professional. Before that, I was treated anywhere from like a useful idiot to worse. And I feel like one of the things that we talked about mentioning today is like the sort of cocktails, like sort of these sorts of cocktail bars that have been very, very popular for the last 15 years, if I'm going to be honest with you, are becoming increasingly less popular right now as people embrace sort of like a carefree, like 1990s, like not really very involved type of bar where everything is on tap or in a can or like a robot will eventually serve you. And I just feel like as someone who spent the first half of my career being treated in an inhuman way and that has enjoyed being treated with respect for the last 10 years, like last night I was in service and was treated with disrespect again, and I just want to sort of point out that while none of us in this room have complete control of the larger trends in our industry and what sort of bars are going to succeed or fail, the sort of bartending we're talking about, the notions of hospitality and service, and the level of craftsmanship that it would take to like work one of these stations is something worth preserving, not just because it's cool or not just because these cocktails are delicious or these bars are fun, but because the connection between being a respected professional matters. And it matters for all of our humanity as the people working in these places. And so us maintaining our craft also allows us to maintain our humanity as we serve people. Because I think as we continue to connect with service and hospitality, to serve someone, whether it's serving them a cocktail or trying to create a hospitality experience, requires vulnerability. One of the things we kind of keep talking about is it's not you, it's you're working, or it's not your drink, it's Kevin Speck's. But I think that this leap of faith that you must take to be hospitable, this leap of faith that you must take to offer great service requires vulnerability. It requires you putting yourself in a position with the guest where that guest can shame you for that, where that guest can make you feel less than them for trying to take care of them. And I think that is like the tension that like sort of I've sort of been on a razor edge throughout my career, is trying to figure out ways in which we can increasingly make bars and bartending respectable, so that for like those of us who don't know anything else and are going to do this for the rest of our life, whether it's cool or people are nice to us or not, that we can do it with dignity. I think that bartending and restaurant work and bar work is truly dignified work, but it does involve an investment, and I think the investment is something that if we make as professionals, that we will see the dividends, and we have seen the dividends over the last decade in the way that we've been treated. I wasn't treated like that before these kind of serious fancy cocktail bars came about. And I'm going to miss it if people stop treating us that way.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, I also think like sometimes you have those nights where you're vibing, like the team is tight, everyone at the bar is having a great time, and you leave and you feel so fulfilled. And then sometimes you have those nights where you're like, I can't do this again tomorrow. Like, I don't know how I'm going to do this again. And I think those great nights are good and let them happen organically, but make sure that you have some other practices in place for yourself that you can refill your cup. Whether that's your family, doing something with your friends, being outside, taking care of yourself, whatever it is, make sure you have that set up so you can fall back on it when you do have those shitty nights, because it's inevitable, right?
Well, and like you know, there's always like all these dualities where like we were talking about zooming in, zooming out, zooming in, zooming out all the time. You have to be able to do that because at some point, this is lipstick on a pig. Like people are just trying to go to sleep at night, people are trying to get laid at the bar, whatever. This isn't that serious. But it also is the most serious thing in my life because it helps me pay my mortgage. You know, so you have to be able to hold both those things at the same time. And you know, before Jim, I think really eloquently broke down the difference between hospitality and service. I've had what's the expression? Something in my craw, where does it crawl? Anyway, I guess the thorn in my neck. I've been really upset because I'm married to a woman who grew up in Berkeley, like super organized, labor late, like real hippie, exactly what you're picturing. And she's really rubbed off on me in a great way. And it's worth mentioning, like, we are all workers. This is a job. You are like, that is something to be super, super proud of. And I got really upset when everybody was like, made it this evangelical thing. Like, we do it for the greater good. For the hospitality of God, we will sacrifice ourselves and all of our sanity and our livers, and it is in service of hospitality. I was like, fuck that. Hospitality is you come over to my house, and I know what you like to drink, so I have some Riesling in the fridge. And I take your coat off, and I ask you how your day's been. That's hospitality, because no money is exchanged. And to me, that's the difference between
I
service
would
and
argue
hospitality.
that that's service, though.
And see, this is what I'm saying. Jim's thought about it more, written about it more, and I'm still working on this. But I'm grateful that we're making a distinction between the two, because I think for your own sanity and our own sanity, there has to be one. To Lindsay's point, you're gonna have bad days back here. And you can still offer good service, and maybe your hospitality isn't like sparkling Disneyland, like wonderful. But you can, to Jim's point, you can be mindful, there are skills, there are maneuvers, there are gestures, like those are learned things. And I'm glad we're pulling these two things apart, because I think too often in our industry, brands especially, can try to like heap on this hospitality deal, and it's like, no, I'm just tired. And I'm gonna be good, I'm gonna smile, I'm gonna make these drinks properly, but like, it's okay, it's service.
Service. And I think what Lindsay was talking about, I think what you're talking about, is boundaries.
Yeah.
Like so much of successfully navigating this career for years and years and years, and many days a week or months, is having boundaries and understanding like, you're gonna come over, I'm gonna take your coat off, I'm going to smile when I pour you the Riesling. But on days that I'm like where my tank is low or where I had a bad night the day before, like I'm not going to potentially rise to the Everest of hospitality, but I will give you good service because that's what I get paid for, and I respect the bar I work in. But and I think that one of the things I've learned, having been doing this for 25 years, is that you can't get to the peace unless you've taken care of yourself. You cannot take care of others unless you've taken care of yourself. And I'm finding the older I get, I have to do so much to like go outside of my house anymore, or to like have a conversation with someone, or like it was very hard to wake up at 5:55 this morning after like working service last night, fly here and know that this was gonna happen. And I think that like I've been visualizing this for days, because I can't, like when I was 25, just like wake up and just go do this anymore. And I think that for all of you, like figuring out as you kind of progress in this industry, the physical like sort of parts of it, like the X's and O's, get easier because you've just done it so many times. I've given so many of these talks before, I'm not nervous. But the older you get, it's a little bit harder. And so you have to like work a little bit harder to succeed in it. And I think that was something that it just took me a long time to understand. I had to keep like, pounding myself into the wall until I realized like I need to do a better job of taking care of myself so I can be successful in my work. And I think speaking to the guests who are like, having a bad day and taking it out on you, I mean, that was me. Like if you set yourself up with too much work, to the notion that you're going to be successful when you haven't like gotten a good night of sleep, had some food, like had some coffee, like talk to people if you needed to, answer some emails, like it's not gonna happen.
Yeah. I think we kind of like, I experienced a little bit of this culture coming up of like, oh, I'll work a double every day, like sleep when I'm dead, I'm gonna fucking do it all. And like that went away from my mind really, really quickly. And we're lucky that we're coming out of the pandemic and we kind of have a chance to rebuild the culture. And it's like, our company's a 4-day work week now. We don't let people work more than 4 shifts. They have to have 2 2 days off consecutively so they can go to the mountains or see their family. And like, this is a great time. I know it's really hard over the bar, but as far as like companies and organization wise, like, this is a really good time to be in a bar.
Yeah. I mean, my generation was always like, I always say that pain is just weakness leading the body. A lot of times. So, I mean, we got to change and adapt, and I think a lot of us hold on to things, right? You have a bad night, and you hold on to it. You have a guest, and it irks you for the rest of the night, kind of thing. It's always moving on from that and trying to compartmentalize that. My analogy always is like, if I have a bad night or I have a bad guest, you know, one of my favorite stories is I had a mentor tell me, he was just like, he picked up this glass and he's like, how heavy do you think this glass is? 8 ounces, right? But how heavy do you think it is if you keep on holding it up, right? You keep holding on to this 8-ounce glass. After an hour, it gets heavier, and another hour, it's even more heavier. And it's like through the day, holding this 1 8-ounce glass, it's going to get heavier and heavier and heavier. So the longer you hold on to something, the more heavier it's going to hold on to. So you have to learn how to compartmentalize or let something go. And that's like the best advice I ever got from one of my mentors, which is like, you have to compartmentalize something that happened during service or happens during the day, and let it go. Because it's like, if you have no control over it, my wife deals with a lot with me, and she just says, you have to learn to let things go that you have no control over. Like, we've been dealing with being really short-staffed here, and I get really frustrated, I get upset, and she's like, there's nothing you can do, right? There's nothing I can personally do, there's nothing I can do about the world that's going to make the situation better for me. And she said, you have to let it go. And it's like, I tried really hard to let it go because it's like the third week we've been short-staffed.
I think
She's
to add
every
on to
day.
that too, that being able, it starts to fester, and then it festers with one person, and then it starts to spread, and the shit talking starts to build up, and then you've built this culture of like, it's us versus them.
Yeah.
And that can happen really fucking quickly. Looking at the Yelp reviews, making fun of them, making fun of guests behind their back, that kind of stuff you've got to nip in the bud really quickly because it can turn your whole culture.
I mean, it's good to vent about it at the end of the night.
Sure.
You know, you go out with your colleagues and have a drink. You know, you could go out and complain about the boss afterwards, after your shifts, and have drinks, and that's how you bond. Like Sean and I were talking about it. It's like, you know, we complain about gin.
More or less for Jim.
Yes.
So
It is a miracle that we are all here.
We got the Q&A section. If anybody has any questions.
But it's all part of it. It's like, you know, and we're all still very close, and Jim talks to us, so it's I think it all comes full circle. But it's just like, have those moments, have those drinks with your coworkers and really vent it. But during service is not the time to make fun of a guest or turn your back on
People
someone.
aren't stupid, you know. You break the facade of service, and not facade. You break that third wall of service, and people feel it. Even if they don't know exactly what's going on, they feel it.
Well, nobody goes out to not feel cool. Like, the second you are in the business of making people feel shitty, like, get out. Because, like, everybody's going out to try to feel cool. If they don't know as much about Batavia or rack as Kevin does, who cares? Like, they're here to feel cool, so make them feel cool. If that's a vodka soda, hell yeah, that's the easiest $11 you're going to make all night. Why would you want them to order one of these difficult to make cocktails? Like, make people feel cool. That's why they're out.
Give you a rack and bang.
So,
I mean, it's good. I mean, it's what's, I guess, best practices of creating, the best experience of creating as a bartender is in this industry.
like, most special you made something.
Yeah, like how special have you made something? Or created an experience that was life changing. If it was just grabbing a newspaper for somebody, or, you know,
Why can you say throw life changing?
life changing. I don't know. I worked for the Ritz for a long time, and they used to tell me this. It was like going a lateral service of ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen. And it was they taught me a lot, but it was also kind of cultish. You carried out these things called Credo cards with 12 basics, and at any point of the day, a manager could come and ask you what the basic of the day was, and like you would have to recite the basic of the day. And literally, they said the Credo card was part of your uniform. So they would ask you what's missing on your uniform. You'd be like, I have everything, my name tag, and you didn't have your Credo card. You were very upset. But it was like that was one of the things that the Ritz taught me was just like it was like someone's like looking for a periodical or a newspaper or something. Oh, I didn't see the news today. It was like running to the store, grabbing a piece of stuff, and creating that little moment for them where just like, you know, if it's splitting a cocktail in half. I mean, you worked at Gramercy, Arlene and I used to love Gramercy because we'd sit at the bar top and we'd be like confused between two desserts, and it'd sit out to both desserts that are confused.
Yeah.
And just making those little touches that are amazing.
It's anticipating someone's needs before they even know that
So, before you said life changing, I was like, I worked at this. Portland doesn't really have real nightclubs, but like whatever Portland's version of a nightclub was, I was lucky enough to work there. It was a very fun bar, and I had this woman come up, and she'd been wonderful all night. It was like a bachelorette party. They were drinking, you know, some vodka version of a Clover Club I'd been making, and she was like, "Listen, we're hanging, and nobody wants to go home, and everybody's mad at me because I'm trying to get them to stop drinking, and could you just?" And I was like, "Oh my god!" And we just started to pour like a quarter ounce of vodka and soda and lime. I wasn't bringing anything in, and at the end of the night, she was like crying because she was shit hammered. And I hadn't been over serving them as much as it sounds in the story. They came a little roughed up, and I should have stopped them at the door, but whatever. It was a bachelor party at nightclub. She was like, "That was so meaningful. Thank you so much. You could have gone the other way." And I was like, "Yeah, of course. Like, I have a wife at home. Like, I would never. Why would I not? You know?" And she just like tears streaming down her face. Again, she was hammered. But I was like really happy because I was like, these girls had a fun night. They danced their pants off. They made the whole room super fun. Like everybody was laughing. Everybody had a good time. I didn't make them feel stupid for drinking too much. That's another thing that we don't talk about enough. It's really embarrassing to get cut off. And so to be able to still participate, I had an ally in this woman who was looking out for her friends. I was like, it was like a very prideful moment, and that worked. You know, bow ties and waistcoats everywhere. But that like really sticks out in my mind. It's like, good job.
I remember when Audrey Saunders told me about an experience she was working for the Ritz, I think when she was working in Netherlands, and she'd like gone over to London to do some sort of event there. And things were going really well for her, and someone from the hotel company came to her and asked her kind of point blank in a very kind of brisk way, like, "Have you started training your replacement?" And Audrey like looked at this guy like, "Am I doing something wrong, or is something not going as planned?" And he said, "No. I mean, have you started training your replacement? You're doing an amazing job here, and I imagine you're going to need to be promoted soon, and it would be a good idea to start figuring out who's going to take your place here." And I feel like for me, like probably the experience that I'm probably most proud of is at PDT. I used to work 4 nights a week, and I was there every day and was there all the time. And at a certain point in this generation of bartenders here, I used to have like people like Angus Winchester or Phil Duff or Sean Muldoon, or basically like these friends of mine who are like truly miserable people who never have anything nice to say about anybody. And never, ever say anything nice to me, ever. And I remember one night when one of my miserable friends, told me they were at PDT one night, and they ordered a Negroni, and they ordered it from a bartender who I was actually quite concerned about how it was going for them. And I was waiting for the like critical feedback, and this person told me that it was the best Negroni they've ever had in their life. And what's the recipe? And I thought to myself, like, I thought they were like making fun of me, mocking me. And I like sort of like, but I like kept it up, and I realized like, no, this was in fact the greatest Negroni this miserable bar curmudgeon has ever had in their life, and it was made by someone who I like wasn't even very confident was going to stay at the bar. And it was a moment where I realized that like it was amazing that like this bar, like these miserable friends of mine who really know bars well liked my bar. And it was also a moment where I realized that it was going to be crucial for the success of the bar for me to not evaluate the bar through my own eyes, but to begin to start evaluating the bar through my friends and frenemies and guests' eyes. And it made me start realizing, like, I am not in the bar and restaurant business for myself. I am truly in this for the people who come here, and therefore I really need to start listening to them. And so it was a very like pivotal moment in my career where I realized that like my miserable also views of a number of my coworkers weren't necessarily wrong, but they were like incorrect in the sense that like other people who were like bar experts were saying they were having the greatest drinking experiences of their life in my bar, and I should listen to them. And I think that the greatest thing that I ever did at PDT was I went home, and I like basically all but didn't come back. And I feel like PDT became more and more and more and more successful as I gave it more and more and more space for it to become what it is. And I think that that is like, as a like parent of a like, or like a sort of, you know, who like really wants to like be involved in everything and has a very strong opinion of how everything is done, it's key as a sort of like producer of one of these things, when you have like talent like that is like up here, to let them operate. And I feel like it's also important for us as we evaluate our own work to like be more, probably more forgiving, you know, and that maybe the things that we think we're not good at are like things that like our coworkers or our guests like don't even notice or don't even care about. And I think that that's like something that is, I consistently go back when I'm like frustrated or upset or concerned about something, and I say to myself like, is this something that is like really crucial or matters to the business or to the happiness of my coworkers or the guests? Or is this just another one of the things that you're super critical about and miserable about? And usually it's the latter.
I don't know. I kind of want to hear your guys' experiences, best experiences, if anyone has one to share before I start calling names. Best experiences. Brian McGregor. Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I call you Indy. Competitor Brian.
I mean, I can drink for a living, so there's a ton of them. But there's one, when I worked for Belvany, my first brand ambassador job, and I was at Harris Steakhouse. And introduced myself to the bar manager, his name was Robert at the time. I said, Robert, with Belvany. If anyone comes to the bar wants to buy want some scotch, I'd love it. Just, you know, let me buy it for them. And I was going out at the end of the bar, having my whiskey. This couple sits down. They orders a Macallan. Oddly enough, that's what I prefer now. And Robert looks at me, I give him a nod. He looks at the guy, he's like, you know, Belvany's a very fine whiskey as well. If you haven't had it, the gentleman at the end of the bar would like to buy it for you. He works for them. And it was just this moment of like awesome hospitality, awareness of the surrounding, and like knowing how to offer the guests a unique experience, but also myself, who was there as a brand representative, making me feel special as well. And it always stands out as like this really aha moment of like what it means to be on the other side of the bar. Right? I've spent so much of my life behind the bar, creating experiences, having fun, and just seeing what it meant to be really taken care of in a good way. It always sticks out, and that was over 8 years ago that it happened. It's still one of the coolest things is the way Robert treated me and treated that guy.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, thanks for calling me.
That's why I asked you to come. Oh, thanks. It's great. Anyone?
There's weddings. A couple weddings that I worked at my old restaurant, which is now closed because of COVID. But it was kind of like a smaller bar. It was like 120 plus tequila and agave spirits, so it was just like very like, all we did was education, like talked about spirits and everyone, and then people come in for the, like there was 2 weddings specifically where, like even at the wedding, like people are having you talk to them about mezcal and like, oh, mezcal tastes like it's too smoky, it's gross, blah blah blah, you know? And all of a sudden you're like having these moments with these guests and everyone's dressed up and they're so fancy, and then they're like, oh, but you get them interested in like, and then by the end of the wedding party, like they're in pictures with like, take a picture with us, like this is the best, like you made our wedding so much better than we could ever imagined, like feeling like you get to be a part of something that, especially a night like that they'll remember for the rest of their lives, and that like somehow your service and your hospitality for them for the night, like they're gonna remember that, you know. And
It's like making the guests feel like they're part of it. Like behind the curtain, right? We talk about the facade, this boundary, this bar top, and creating that experience where the guest feels like you're part of the team and part of the business, part of the bar. And unveiling that curtain and being VIP or making that very special for them. That's and then taking pictures with them.
I would say that like our business, like at a very base level, like in the Maslow hierarchy of needs, is like food and drink. Someone comes in hungry or thirsty, we give them food or drink. At a higher level of the pyramid, we're in the relationship business, and ideally by giving them good, safe food and beverage, we're able to build a relationship that maybe we can grow and sustain. And I feel like at the highest level of our business, we have the opportunity, if the first two are good, to create memories. And I think that opportunity, like you're saying, to like, you know, create a magical experience at a wedding is something that someone will never forget. Like all of my greatest experiences at like PDT and other bars was like, you know, an engagement, or like someone came like on a night when like there was a death in the family, or like basically these like moments that they never forget, and they decided of all the places that they wanted to come to, that they wanted to come to the bar that I ran and like be with my staff. And I think that there are really there's no greater opportunity for us in this business to like be part of those experiences with people and to make sure that we're able to like carry them through it, whether it's a night where it's a moment of sadness or a moment of celebration. And I think that like sort of opportunity is something that like just keeps me in this industry, because in addition to you creating a memory for them, that's the joy to me of hospitality. When you get to that top of the pyramid, it's like they will never forget that wedding, but you will never forget showing them mezcal at that wedding. And that like sort of reciprocality to me is the like thing that just keeps me going through all those like really shitty nights. It's like you get to one of those nights and you're like, this is why I do this.
The payoff is not what's in the glass, right? It's what we give. You said like experience. We're in the experience and relationship business. Like how many of you guys remember the best cocktail you had, or more importantly, the best experience you had? Right? It's about a memory. Like I don't think of things as best cocktail places. I think of people in the place and the time that I'm having. I'll go back. There's this really shitty bar in New York City that me and my friends once took over. It was called Blind Tiger, and it was like the shittiest dive bar in the world. And it sucks. Like gin and tonic sucked. Everything was gone. But there was like 20 of us, and we took over this bar. It was absolutely amazing. And we try and recreate that experience, but it's a once in a lifetime experience. But that's what resonates with me. It's not about the drink or what's the spirit of the back bar. It's that time, the place, and the bartender. And that was the experience business. And that's what I remember. That's what always resonates for me. Is how I felt at that moment and that time. Not the drink.
So PDT is like we're little speakeasy through a hot dog place, $15 cocktails 15 years ago. Like it was a stressful place. Like when Jim and I were joking, I interviewed for a barback job and came in a suit and had a briefcase for a one-day-a-week barback job. And Jim very lovingly told the story, but I mean it was, you know, there's this reverence for the place. And so when I went to work every day, I knew what it felt like to feel out of place. Like I walked up to that phone booth and was like, what the fuck is this thing? Which is how everybody feels their first time at this bar. So if I'm the guy that's like, well, everybody goes out to feel cool, the second you start interacting with people, they're super uncomfortable. And what I used to do, because I'm a typical cis straight white male and I love sports, was you see you check somebody's ID and you see they were from like Alabama. You'd be like, Roll Tide or Eagle. And you'd be like, oh, thank God. Oh my God. Brother, I don't know what you're doing here. This crisis. My wife is in bed. I'm just freaking out. And I'm like, we just get to what do you typically drink? Listen, we've got this great cocktail, you know. But like, just acknowledge what's going on. And it sounds like that's exactly what you did. But like, these people are open to this experience. Let me pour all of it into that, because that's not even vulnerability. That's just empathy. You were like, what would I want to have happen to me in this moment? And you know, as like a scared 22-year-old working at PDT, I was like, we talk about sports, like, I don't know what the difference between VEP and regular chartreuse is. Like, one tastes really good, and the other one tastes really, really good. Like,
I like that example of like taking someone who's maybe like uncomfortable in like your bar, or maybe even just in your city. Like you were saying, sometimes you have people come, if you live in New York or San Francisco or Portland, like those are places that people travel to from places like Alabama, and sometimes they maybe have preconceived notions about that city, whether they're gonna like it, is the bartender gonna be mean? And I always train people like try to engage in like non-transactional conversations like whenever you can with people, because there's a big chance that that person is a tourist. And if they're a tourist, I'm like, great, I got this. Like I'm gonna like take a little piece of paper and like here's the best place to like get a taco, and like here's another bar where my friends work at. It's a really exceptional place, and here's a really great park, you know, and like they just like light up, you know, because they're like, oh my god, like the bartender's like giving me like the key to the city. And that's something that I always love to do, and people leave feeling so good, and sometimes they even come back later. So that's one thing that I've always really loved to do. I think it makes a big difference. Is just find out about who that person is, and then usually you can offer them something valuable that isn't just the drink in their hand.
Remember sending boomerangs?
That's still
Yeah.
That must be like take this.
They're like, we've got a mission.
I remember sending a boomerang from Mother's Ruin, and it was like an inflatable hand filled with like a slushie, and I was bringing it to Jesse Vita for his going away party at oh my god, I can't even think of the name of it. The last party we worked at in New York.
Dead Rabbit.
Not Dead Rabbit. Black Tip. Yeah. I remember it's freezing. I'm just carrying this giant inflatable cup on the subway, like.
That's awesome.
One time I gave this lady like a mixing glass from I don't know if anybody works for Botanist, but Botanist has like those mixing glasses. I personally don't like them. I don't like using them, so I just had a bunch of them. And this lady, like we were using one at the time, this broke the other one, and she just loved it. And she's like, "Oh, it's like the coolest thing ever," you know. And I was like, "Well, okay, cool. I got some more." So I gave her the mixing glass, and it was like the most incredible thing that ever happened to her. She was so excited about it, and I hadn't seen her like for probably like a year. And then she came back and she was like telling about the mixing glass and how she broke it. And I was just like, and I'm like, how? Those things are like impossible to break. So I gave her like another one, and she was like, what? And she even asked me if she could. I mean, she was probably like in her like mid 40s. You know, she was like older lady. She asked her to come work at the bar, and I was just like, wow, like. Here's my card, you know. I was like, man, I'm gonna have to break with this lady that I'm probably not gonna hire at a bar back here. But luckily she didn't email me. But she was so like impressed and so happy that she wanted to even come work at the bar, which was really, really like heartwarming and cute. But I think that was just, you know, those small gestures. You know, we all get tons of merch like from brands and stuff. We're like, oh crap, more of this stuff, you know. But for people like that, you know, if you just give them like, hey, I got this like spoon from Woodford Reserve, they're like, oh my god, you know. So just taking stuff like that, again, just something that is not what they expect, it just can completely make their day.
Yeah, I mean, it's like drawing them in beyond the curve. It's
Yeah.
what everyone wants some kind of experience. The VIP.
Yeah.
Be part of the industry, not be a bartender. It's taxing. I'm tired of going, but you don't want to. The guest always thinks it's going to be fun. Drawing them in.
You remember we this is just a funny anecdote that because I feel like there's a lot of love in this room right now, so I'm like, I think we squish it a little bit. We worked with a guy named Nate, and Nate was just a bartender, super tight drinks, handsome dude. And I remember this beautiful woman sitting in front of him. She's like, man, you must love working with him. He's so glamorous. And he reached his hand into the dunk sink, pulled a fistful of just discarded everything. He was like, is this so glamorous to you? And we just threw it back in, and I was bar back, and I was just like,
That's totally a
I think that like we in this conversation we had a couple days ago to figure out what we were going to talk about, I was thinking about how for the last like 10 or 15 years we were fortunate enough to have someone like Anthony Bourdain out there like telling stories about food that weren't necessarily just stories about food. They were stories about culture and stories about history and stories about, and really like using food as a way to break down barriers in class and race and culture and religion and gender and it was, I was thinking about like just, you know, if you turn on the TV now, there's like some new Food Network show called The Rat, where I think the like contestants all like try to destroy each other's food or so. I forget what the exact purpose of it was, but I was thinking about how in the absence of people, or literally there was only one Bourdain, but in the absence of someone like Bourdain, we're left with popular cultural narratives of the food world as like a sort of reality show, like dog eat dog, us versus them, like battle royale, which is a similar sort of view that I think you see in shows like Bar Rescue, where it's like there is a savior who will come to a disorganized place and then bring order to it, and then everything will kind of be fine. And it's this very sort of like cookie cutter narrative that, in my opinion, is completely detrimental to the larger public's view of the way these places operate, the people who work in them, the type of service we offer, and our aspirations as humans. And I think, like, going back to like harshing everyone's mellow, or just thinking of like the challenge we face in this kind of post-pandemic time, is that I think it's very crucial that as we continue to like gather, that we always are telling these like stories about like the spoon or the whiskey experience at the bar, like telling the stories that are the like heartwarming human narratives of connection, because what we're beginning to see in the larger kind of pop cultural sphere is a view of our industry that I don't think really represents, you know, the way that we all treat each other and view each other, which is as part of a community and as part of a group of people who want to work in a communal way to raise all of our folks, you know.
I mean, it's like I said, it's like we're being a bartender is a respectful position, right? It's a job, and it's a real job when you're paid for it, and you know we've worked and we continue to work to bring that to shed that light on us, to say it's respectful. Like I know growing up it was always just like bartending. It was just like, what else do you do? It was like, you're not just a bartender, right? You must do something else.
What's your real job?
Yeah, what's your real job? It was always asked, and it's still get asked. You know, people still ask that. It's just like, what else do you do? You know, and it's just like, no, I just like bartend. And I love what I do. I'll do it until both my legs give out and both my arms give out, which is probably soon.
Maybe we can parlay that into like a super bartender.
Oh,
The bionic bartender.
Yeah, you're talking about harvesting Kevin's body parts, just strapping them onto a younger bartender.
I mean, health and wellness. I mean, Lindsay, you've done such a great job. I mean, something I very admire is just how you balanced being a badass bartender and like absolutely amazing behind the bar, and that health and wellness. Like, you know, we're surrounded by alcohol and buying drugs all the time, and trying to find that balance is very difficult. You've done such a great job because being so healthy from yoga to now it's you're like super into writing twice stuff.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, it's a journey. Like I was in New York, you know, at PET in my 20s, and I partied really hard. Not too hard, but I partied, and then it kind of started to wear off, and my interests changed, and I started to implement more and more self-care before it kind of became like the hip thing to do. But I think like when you are young, be young and party and have fun, but make sure that you have those things in place that you can still take care of yourself. And then it's just you just get older and you kind of lose interest in it naturally. I mean, some of us don't. We were just kind of talking about some of our older peers that are still in it really hard. But yeah, I think right now more than ever, there's so many resources out there for you to scoop up. If you feel like I don't know where to start, or I don't have, you know, the funds for a gym membership, or, you know, I'm nervous and afraid I don't want to look stupid. It's definitely, you know, not one yoga session at Tails is really going to do anything for you. You know, you've got to cultivate something that is consistent. But yeah, and I mean, mental health, that's a whole other can of worms.
I feel like physical and mental help each other, right? Like you physically, I always like to say I like to physically exert myself because I'm able to reset myself mentally. Like if I'm completely exacerbated physically from a workout or something, it allows me to reset myself mentally to be able to like focus on things, because then I'm not worrying about my health or my wellness anymore because I've exerted. It's focus, and it works for me. It won't work for everybody, but it's like finding what's going to work for you. If it's yoga, if it's boxing, or if it's breaking my ribs, it's like, you know, there's something out there that can put that balance together for you. It's a personal choice.
Yeah, maybe it's just like fucking Dungeons and Dragons with like a friend, you know? It doesn't have to be like, you know, you're gonna run a marathon. It can be something as simple as a card game.
I remember like getting asked a question about like, you know, what inspired me or like what other sort of folks inspire me in respect to music, and I think it's like Weezer's playing tonight, I guess, and it's like every Weezer album sounds the same. And granted, like they're probably gonna have a lot of people there to see Weezer tonight, the Weezer that like I remember from like high school and college. But the thing I like about like Lindsay's career is that like Lindsay definitely falls into the like Beatles or like Radiohead like musician level of like I feel like you are constantly recreating yourself. Like when I met you, you were an actress, and then you were posting and waiting tables, and then you became our, you know, you sound more like our head bartenders, and then you worked in ambassadorship. Now you're owning bars, and now you're like practically a professional athlete. And I feel like it's one of the things I think is interesting and inspiring to me is just this idea that like it's really hard to do the same, like to be Kevin is like really hard. Like it's not, like most people don't have the bandwidth to just be a great bartender for 25 years. And I feel like as someone myself who neither has the bandwidth or the body, I've found outlets in working, you know, on the brand side with banks, or in working on the restaurant side with my restaurant TV in Portland, or in writing books, in all these other things. And I find that when I was younger, I remember there was just this idea that there's one path. You have to become a great bartender, and then you're going to open your own bar, and that's the dream. And if it's not that, then you haven't achieved what you want to achieve. And I think creating these different off-ramps, whether they just be like sort of hobbies, like just staying in great shape or playing D&D or is important. But I also think that like diversifying your career so that it isn't only one thing that you do to get that sense of like self-worth or achievement. And I think that if you think about the people in our industry who many of us would consider to be the most successful people in our industry, most of them built their recognition not through bartending. Because let's face it, we all think that we are the best bartenders on earth. None of us here think that any of us is a better bartender than we are. And so a lot of the bartenders that have built their brands have built it by doing something else. And I think so developing what it is, whether it's like music or writing or something athletic or something entrepreneurial, that's going to complement what you do in the bar or restaurant, is I think how you're both going to like create multiple pathways of success and that endorphin rush and that outlet when one thing isn't going well. But it's also going to have a sort of a knock-on effect in what you do in bars and restaurants. Having all your eggs in one basket it puts a lot of pressure on that basket to be a safe space, and that's not the way the world really
Totally. To go off of something that we said earlier that I think is like really worth reiterating is like taking this mindset that we talked about almost like evangelically or reverentially back here in terms of like hospitality and empathy and all that stuff, and using it as your career continues to evolve. Because like the bartender that made Brian feel special because he's a brand ambassador could have treated him like shit and played a prank on him because he's a brand ambassador. Like taking that sort of empathy and applying it to whatever it is that you do in addition to this and after this is only going to help you too. Because if you realize that the brand people that come in were super great at the job you had just maybe 10 minutes earlier, maybe you treat them with a little more respect. And I'm saying this out of like both self-interest as a vendor, but also like I was a shithead. Like I came from New York and was like, thought I was the best bartender in the world, was working in Portland and treated these brand reps like shit. And granted, like the Southern one really got it wasn't right. Like they're paying their mortgage. I like could turn it at 4 o'clock and tear up. I could turn it on and everybody loved me, whatever. But then I like had this me thing with vendors or sales reps or whoever. And it's like if you take that mindset and actually apply it to everything, which is like now I know we're getting like self-help and Google and shit. It's just, even if you just look at it simply, it's just going to help you in your career because you never know where those people pop back up and nobody forgets when they got treated like crap. So to Jim's point, chase everything outside of this, but try to keep this mindset that we've all been talking about for all that stuff because it's going to benefit you more.
I think just to tell you when Jim was talking about success, I think Ryan and I Greg and I did this little thing for some event 5 years ago, and we talked about success and like to measure how it's like how subjective success is, right? In your own mindset, like how do you measure success? Like it's a moving target, or what your definition of success as a bartender is would be completely different from the next. So I think it's a subjective thing for yourself and what you think success is and what you're looking for in terms of your career or successful life. You know, what you consider a successful life? Is it just making every drink successful, or just crushing it in the service well, or feeling like that perfect harmony of flow behind the bar and a perfect service? So it's just the stem off of success. Success is a very subjective thing. And to stop looking, I learned in my career a lot of times in my younger years, I was always comparing myself to other bartenders, and I was looking at them and being like, I want to be more like so and so. I think at one point I was like, oh, I want to be more like Steve Schneider. And I was like, oh, he's everywhere. He's bird personality and everything. And I think I said to someone, and they're just like,
Words of never said.
I was like, you. And one of my mentors says that we should stop comparing yourself to other people because you're going to be yourself, and you need to be you. You don't want to be like the outspoken bartender if that's not you. So it's just being genuinely you is a success. So you'll grow into yourself and become different, and you'll grow and continue to learn and become a better bartender. Is kind of what I'm saying. Not to compare success is subjective, right?
But you're kicking Steve's ass right now.
I mean,
I was just with Steve and he is so one of the things that like really set me free as a young bartender is I talked about perfection to Danny Meyer when he was at the bar at Fairmont Tavern. He like stopped me and he's like, we don't really talk about perfection here, we really focus on excellence. And he said it in a cryptic kind of way, and I didn't really understand it at the time, but the more and more I thought about it, perfection is quite literally like the absence of mistakes, the absence of flaws, the absence of any issues. And I found in my life, everything that I've basically learned from making mistakes, or everything that I've learned through a process of trying to do too much, usually failing, and then trying to recover and figure out what happened. And I find that if you as a bartender, but also you maybe as a manager or operator, if you creating an environment that people feel comfortable to strive, then you are creating an environment where people are going to make mistakes. Because if people strive, that means they're going to be doing something that's a little bit beyond them, and there's going to be problems with that. And I think one of the things that I've always tried to do as an operator is to not reward failure, or to not create an environment where there's a lot of failure going on, but to create an environment where people feel comfortable doing a little more than maybe they should be, and taking a little more initiative than they should be, so that they can inevitably make some mistakes, and that they can learn from that. And I think that to me is a move towards creating an environment that promotes excellence. Because to me, excellence is a more forgiving term than perfection. Perfection, an environment that strives towards perfection, is an environment that does everything it can to mitigate mistakes and errors. And when you're playing defense, you're not going to score a lot of points. Whereas, and you guys know that Golden State Warriors play here, but when you're playing offense, you have to score more points to win the game. So I feel like having a Golden State Warriors mindset about excellence as opposed to perfection, to me, like as soon as I stopped trying to be perfect, my life got a lot better.
That's great. I guess maybe some questions. That's about 90 minutes, so we're going to start now. We are at 3, so just open it up for any questions. Good service.
I'm just curious, what would the service look like at PET back then? Like just
Yeah. Yes! Oh, wow.
I'll let
We can get in. There was was no in time. We opened at 6.
The host would come in around 2 or 3
Yeah.
and
2:45.
2:45 and plug the phone in
Yeah.
and start to answer calls. There was no voice messages. It was like the window for reservations. It was the day of, and it opened, and you like had your water, had your snack, and you sat there for like an hour and a half, filling up the slots, and then the next however long until the bartenders came in, telling people no.
I think there were 18 spots, so you took all the reservations in about 22 minutes, and then you said no to people for 90 minutes.
But you had to do it in a way that they would call back tomorrow. So just like so much excitement and love in like summer. And then the bartenders would just get in whenever the bartenders got in, which was usually
4:30.
early. But even earlier than that, we would sit, we would eat, we would talk, and then you started setting up. And it's so funny being back here because I'm like, there's so much room for activity. It's like the bar was like this wide, so you can just kind of get back there at some point. Hopefully not with all your nice clothes on.
There was no flask.
Yeah, because you can stretch the back of your shirt, or you get copper on your shirt from the bar top. But you get in, you start setting up, you just go from. We open at 6, and like Kevin and I were joking, like we would like we would have races to see how fast we could eat a hamburger at like 2 in the morning. But like you were on your feet making because to get back to this point, like it was everybody's best night. Like it was everybody's birthday, wedding, every freaking night.
It's such a niche special occasion
You were
bar.
on because it was like so and so came from Madrid, so and so was in from Tokyo, Dave Wander's just sitting at the end of the like you were just like so it was like incredibly stimulating, but it was like straight through.
Yeah, 6 p.m. to 4. I remember like getting my hot dog and literally just eating it like
Oh, yeah.
under my well
Oh, yeah.
as fast as I possibly could, and then like smoking like as fast as I could.
Well, and like, so I bar back to start, and you were basically, there were these like little, it's exactly what you picture in New York. It's like a basement, so it's like rickety, you know, you go down, you're like juicing pineapples, you're doing the bacon fat thing, you run back up to see how busy, okay, they're good, then you run back down, you run back up, like it's just, it was so exhilarating. It was so much fun. You were just always go. You could never do enough, but like, you fed off the energy, and like, you know, you keep talking about these team, like the team, you talk about the good night, like good night at PT, we had fun. We had so much, guests had fun, we had fun, like it was,
Yeah, everybody
Yeah.
borrowed in and being friends and talking to
Yeah.
each other, and there was always just an electricity and excitement, and then a celebrity would come in, and it was awesome. It kicked my ass for sure, but also because it was so dark and there were no windows, and the whole secret entrance, you just felt like you were transported somewhere that wasn't like where you were. You didn't know what time of day it was. It was so it was such a singular experience being in that room.
well, we could go till 4, which I was always super grateful for, especially working in Portland. The last call, maybe just didn't
We
sleep
stopped
at
letting
night.
people in at 3.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that's right.
And it just like made such a difference because like after 2 a.m. like nobody's trying to do anything good. Myself included, like
I remember
It was
we,
nice.
we used to be able to get out, because I would spend all of my tips at Blue.
yeah.
Oh my
Oh.
gosh.
We go Irish bar across the street. Talk about hospitality though. They see us locking up and they'd have the Guinness half poured, and then we'd finish locking up and it would be. And then as the seasons changed, you could always tell it was summer because they'd start serving those micheladas that they'd do with the salt and the lime and the hot sauce in a can. And you'd be like, oh, it's summer. They're serving us micheladas now. Oh yeah. That was fun.
Tony, yeah.
Is there like a particularly memorable story that involves all 4 of you from the BD era, good or bad?
I don't think outside. I mean, we all have separate stories. I love my Ryback story. Sean, she Sean Ryback's, but I don't have any particular of all 4 of us. It was unique to have all 4 of us, for sure. So I only had 2. I had 2 shifts. I know I had a shift with Nate and Luis, and I had a lot of shifts with John.
Yeah.
I can probably speak more volume to my stories with John and Derek.
I feel like you taught me like a good chunk when I was first learning to bartend. It came from you. I remember spending a lot of time alone with you, and you were all managed up.
Yeah, still am.
There was also like, he was working at Clover Club and so was Nate, and Nate worked at Peggy Club with me before PDT, and as Sean was mentioning before the bar he was talking about earlier was Milk and Honey, and it was, I guess, 15 years ago, the cocktail world was so small. Like we literally knew, we all knew each other, and so it was kind of this generation was like a fun time because it was like a cross pollination where we'd all worked in almost all the other bars, like almost all the bar families' philosophies were represented in some ways with PDT, and I think with Lindsay and Sean, they both were, I think, the first generation of staff that I had who weren't like extras at one of those other cocktail bars. So like I hired them, and like Lindsay started at the door, and Sean started as a bar back, and so they worked from host and bar back to waiting tables to bartending, and I believe both of you kept shifts on the floor, not maybe the whole time you were there, but parts of it. So like part of what I always wanted was something that I saw Milk and Honey do, which was they split shifts where some nights you'd be behind the bar and some nights you'd be on the floor. And I love the fact that like Lindsay especially had door experience, floor experience, bartending experience. I don't know if you ever bar back. But Sean also had all floor bar and bartending. And I feel like once you've worked every station in the bar, you just have a greater understanding of what's going on in the bar. But you also have greater empathy towards what your coworkers are dealing with at a certain time. You can actually you can anticipate what's going to happen because you've been there before. And so I think this generation of bartenders at PDT was like the first that kind of worked all stations and kind of came in from the like ground up. I think you were already a bartender, unfortunately, when you were at PDT. You were a little bit of a scout, but
Yeah.
but I feel like Lindsay and Sean were like the beginning of a culture of PDT that wasn't borrowed from Julie, borrowed from Audrey, borrowed from Sasha, borrowed from somewhere else. That was like creating a new imprint for like what the future of our bar is. So I feel like in many ways, like Lindsay and Sean were the two people that set PDT's culture into like being its own instead of just being a borrow from like someone else, which was like really kind of exciting for me.
And what was really exciting about being in that role was Jim had a clear enough vision and was good enough that we did stuff at PDT different than all the Sasha properties and all the Devon Company properties. And we were super proud of it, but he trusted his system enough that we went to all those bars and just learned. We'd sit across the room and just watch guys like Devon, watch guys like Nate, watch guys like Meehan and Sam, watch guys like even, Rousey asked Phil Hoard make drinks is like poetry. Like it was so, to be able to just spend your money learning every single night and get a little bit loosey-goosey was such a treat, and it's something that Kevin and I bemoaned a lot, is that like we sort of lost that sense of like, I just want to go watch somebody work. And obviously the pandemic is like really trying to return that. But on like in addition to all the stuff that we learned at BT, we learned just through osmosis. Oh, that's a cool. Oh, I never thought. Oh, that's how they make that. Oh. And it's just like that. They build that community.
Yeah. I'll never forget the first time that I went to Milk and Honey after a shift, and I was kind of sick, and it was so late, and I was like, oh, I should be going home. But I like got into the booth, and I think I mentioned that I wasn't feeling well, and like a penicillin was slid over in my hand, and I was like, it's like glowing yellow, and I take a sip, and it was just like, like exactly what I needed. It was like the best tasting cocktail, and it like soothed me, and it made me feel so good. I'll never ever forget like my first night going there and having that drink. It was such a tight community.
I think too, the other thing about working at PDT was like Jim was like our like mother hen. Like my first night bartending, I was training, but my first night bartending, a very acrimonious thing happened between the then bar manager and a server who I happen to be very close with still to this day. And he ended up leaving because this acrimonious thing happened. And she stayed. She was very upset. And Jim came flying in and was just like, you stayed, you left. That's how this is going to be. And it was this like, we really circled the wagons that night. But I'll never forget David Slate, who's this like legend of San Francisco bartender. This old slanted door, you might know him, David Eddy. He looked at me and he was like, well, looks like you're working service, mate, because I don't work service. And I was like, so I hopped into my little barback t-shirt, and I'll never forget the way Jim was talking to this woman, and I was like, oh, it is still like, I don't want to say us versus them, but it was like a very real circle of the wagon sort of moment. And like, I think that at its best, this industry does sort of create family when you go out. Like none of my family lived on the East Coast, so that was like, I literally went to school, studied music, had a job at Def Jam and chose bartending over that, and that was my dream job, because of moments like that where I was like, oh shit, like this is real. Like it's not just us all having fun getting loosey-goosey. But yeah, that was like a real like, oh, Jim is our manager like moment. Like he was like, he's protecting us from the bad guys. It was a shiso leak, if I remember.
I know that story 'cause I talked to Jim the next day.
Yeah.
I remember that story.
I appreciated the way that Jim set up opportunity too, where he was like, I remember being like, I don't want to host anymore, I want to make the drinks. And he was like, okay, I need a commitment from you for at least a year. And then we can talk. And I remember being like, okay, that's a big commitment. And then from there, it just gave me entree into, he brought me over to Food and Wine magazine to help edit the cocktail edition that year. And then we were doing events, and then Sean and I got to go to Tales, and then brands started knocking at my door, and I was like, oh my gosh, like the whole world opened up, and I was just trying to be like a shitty actress. And I just went, I pivoted into just immersing myself in the culture of that world. So thank you for that line.
I feel like for me, like as I like look back at it, the joy that I felt just like watching you guys and kill it, and like the pride that I have, like being here at you guys is like really overwhelming.
Yeah, seriously. The thing that is so fun for us too is like, as we stand up here and get to talk about how meaningful it was to get to work with and for Jim, like I don't know who all is in. I know everybody's in the PCH family, but I don't know who actually like works for Kevin. Like Kevin is also that in a really, really big way, which is why we were all just like, yeah, what do you need, Kevin? Like whatever, we got it. Like working here and working in Pomona is all of the excitement, is available to you, all of the excitement that we feel about being a PCH, or PET. And I think that's what's so exciting to me about the way Kevin sort of conceived this whole thing, and the way y'all are willing to engage in it. Is like Kevin sees sort of a hole in the marketplace, as it were, in terms of like this storytelling. And I'm very grateful and very moved that you care this much about your team, that you want to pour this into them, because all of these opportunities are available to you through Kevin as well. Like, again, I don't know how many of you work with or for Kevin, but Kevin is that kind of dude too. So it's just worth pointing out. We're happy to be here.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the bar business, the bar is a stage, and when you own the bar, sometimes you're an actor in the bar being a stage. But I feel like for me, eventually, like as I started working with better and better bartenders, I realized like I could be a better director now because I have such such skilled bartenders. And now that I'm so old, like my bartenders, like I had a bartender laugh at me last night when I had 3 shakers. She's like, I'll take 2. And it's just like, now they just laugh in my face. But I just feel like the ability, going back to hospitality, the opportunity to provide opportunities with people is really what it's all about. And I think back in the day when we all worked together at PDT, we were like the number 1 bar in the world, and like, everyone cared about us. And it's like, now like I'm sort of like a has-been, and PCH is like a 50 best bar, and is like is legitimately the new hotness. And I think that is like part of the thing about being in this industry for a long time is like you're gonna have your moment and things are gonna be really hot. And if you're smart, you'll like be passing off as many opportunities as you can, because you won't be able to take them all. So that years later, like they're gonna be the ones inviting you to speak, and not the opposite. And I think that is something that like I've really enjoyed as my kind of career has progressed, is like kind of stepping back and just enjoying like my colleagues' success. Like that's what it's really all about. And I think that translates also to like how we feel about our guests. Like it's fun to watch your friends and colleagues kill it.
I hope that answers your question. So no, but yes.
I have a question.
Yep.
So Kevin, I really enjoyed your story earlier about the mentor with the analogy of pulling the 8-ounce shaker tin. And also we were talking a lot about learning and legacy, and so I was curious if either of you three, or each of you three, have an example of maybe like a life lesson or a nugget, like gem sort of wisdom that you picked up from a mentor along the
no accounting for taste. We talked about this a little bit, but that's, I was lucky enough to work for and now work with a guy named Daniel Shoemaker, and he employed me when I was probably my like cockiest, and he sat me down and he was like, there's no accounting for taste. He said it in Latin, because if you know Daniel, that's how he is. And I was like, what's that mean? He's like, no, there's no accounting for taste. But like, it doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter what they think. Like, if you can meet their need, just meet their need. And it's incredibly humbling. Like, it's really nice. Even when we're just talking about music, and oh, that record sucks. It's like, there's no accounting. It's like this like freeing mantra. So yeah, there's no accounting for taste.
Dushan, Zarek, a long time ago, I remember being, he came behind the bar to talk about, he had a yogic background. He came in and he gave everybody a marble, and he had everybody put the marble in their pocket. And then he was like, when you're in the shit, when you're weeded and you're just having a bad night, reach into that pocket, touch the marble, and say, it is like this right now. And it was this mantra that I kind of developed. I didn't really do the marble, but I remember being like overwhelmed and like wanting to take a shot or wanting to talk shit and just like not fighting with reality, but just embracing it like it's like this now and it won't be forever. And then tomorrow I might have the same moment and it'll go and it'll be fleeting. So that mantra, it is like this right now, just accepting the moment for what it is, made a pretty big impact on me.
I thought I very sure, you know, it's Tim.
I remember a moment where I was having a very good night and someone I cared a lot about wasn't because I was. And they pulled me aside after having a lot of drinks as I was walking past and got really close to my ear and said, "Don't believe me." And that was all they said to me. And I feel like it's not inspiring when someone you care very deeply about, instead of celebrating with you, tells you not to believe the hype. But I will say that moment, which probably wasn't their brightest moment, I've never forgotten it. And even though it was said with some malice, I actually find it to be quite inspiring because I've been privileged enough to just have a lot of really amazing moments in my life. And when I was younger especially, I did believe my own hype, you know, and I really did. I've now I'm so far away from some of these experiences that I can say with some honesty that I did believe the hype a little bit. And that was fun. I was really enjoying myself and it was great. And I don't know that I would necessarily I would do a lot of things differently, but I don't have a lot of regrets. But I will say that whether it's positive hype or negative hype, I think it's important, you know, in a service and hospitality mindset to realize that this isn't the hype business, it's real. And then there's a lot of hype in our business and we hype ourselves up. It's not all bad, but I just think that in some ways that comment has resonated with me over time and it came from someone who does love me. And I think maybe I needed to hear it at that time. And I'm glad they said it, even though obviously they probably should.
Because I had one recently, drunk conversation with, wasn't even just someone that was not even an industry, just an entrepreneur. They gave me this number. He said 86,400. Does anyone know what that means?
How many seconds in a day?
How many seconds are in a day? Exactly. And you told me there's 86,400 seconds in a day. He says it's up to you what you want to do with those 86,400, right? And it's you capitalizing every second that is a day, which is, you know, you could break it down in hours, just say it's 24 hours, but it was more meaningful when he said it was 86,400 seconds in a day, because every second counts, and how successful and what you do with those 86,400 seconds is what's going to put you where you want to be. That was the best drunk conversation I had. That's the only thing I remember from that night. It was 86,400. I thought it was a pretty neat conversation.
That reminds me, have you ever seen the Yellow Submarine, the Beatles movie, The Yellow Submarine? in it, they say like how long, a minute really can be half a period of time, and they say like, who wants to prove it to you, and they count down a minute by seconds, and you watch as different drawings of seconds go across the screen to just really drive home how much you can really do with the time.
So one thing we don't, no one, I mean, he said he was no one gets more, no one gets less. We all have that even playing field of 86,400 seconds. So
Well,
yeah.
also like the converse side of that, like it is such a hustle culture.
Yeah, it's
Like there's always something to do. There's always more work. Like managing, bartending, whatever you're doing, like there's always something else to do, and like there's also that feeling of like you have those moments when time stops, where you're like, wow, like I don't need to be anywhere else but here right now. Like I just need to like really, like you're saying with the marble, like be present, because like this is what I'm doing right now. This is all like I'm not like, even though we have like extensions of our, you know, nervous system on all these like social media things and everything, like that's not really us. We're just right here. That's all we have to offer, you know, like remembering that for me sometimes is like, I have so much to do, and it's like actually my bartender's having a really bad day and I just need to give them like 5 minutes of attention, you know, like.
That's true. Cool. I know we went a little over. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
I have one question.
Oh.
Jim, who's the bartender you were really worried about?
That's been all our minds.
I will say it wasn't you, and they are still bartending, and they are very similar.
Couldn't help with the name, but sure.
This is on FDR.
What city? What's their first initial?
Yes, sir.
Cool. Again, thank you so much, Lindsay.
Yeah, thank you so much for like listening to us.
Jim, Lindsay, John.
Thanks for having us.